Assalamu alaikum everyone, this is Sanobar Sultan and here I am today with another video, and this time it is titled how to get a high score in the CSS exam. Now I'll get straight to the point because my previous videos were about how to write an English essay, and there was another video about the compulsory subjects in CSS. Now okay, everybody is prepared. For example, everybody has covered a certain ground in the exam. So what's the way forward? How can you get not only to pass but to actually excel in the exam? So I'll be telling you that. Now before I tell you the tricks and traits about how to excel in the exam, there are two prerequisites that you must have covered ground. That should be like covered territory for you before we discuss how to excel in an exam. The number one aspect is that you must have covered and done at least 5 years of past papers. That is mandatory. So if you've done 5 years of past papers of any particular subject, that's great, you're good to go. The second thing is that you have covered the syllabus. You have done majority or at least more than 90% of the syllabus. You have done the topics on your own. These are the two prerequisites. Once you have covered them, now we will go on how to excel in the exam. So I'll be telling you, if we are to break it down into 10 points, I'll be telling you about how to excel in the exam. So the first point is you never start an answer from the first page. You never start it in the neat handwriting. What you do is you will go on the last page of your booklet, you will write the heading rough draft, and you will make a rough draft of that question. So what I'm trying to say is that you never attempt the question immediately. You will first attempt it in the rough draft on the last page of your booklet. You make an outline. For example, you've read the question, make down the points of everything that you're going to write. You can write it in a shorthand form, whatever it is that you're going to be writing in your exam paper, and you're just going to write it that this point number 1, point number 2, point number 4, point number 8, point number 9, point number 10. So never attempt your question immediately. Do it in the rough draft. It will take, maybe it will take 10 minutes, but it will be worth it. Why it will be worth it? Because if you just start writing the answer immediately, there will come a point where you might end up sitting in the exam hall thinking what to write next. And that might take a longer time compared to if you've already made an outline in the rough draft. So you will be better able to, you will be better equipped to write that answer. So the trick is spend that 10 minutes of the first 10 minutes in the exam hall, make those outlines, and then attempt your question paper. Okay, that was trick number 1. Now tip number 2 is address all parts of the question. Now you have to understand that each aspect of the question carries different weightage or sometimes equal weightage. For example, the question says explain the problems and the solutions. Now what happens is, if you're struck by the word problems and you've read a lot about it, you'll say, oh, I've read a lot about problems, I think I can write 10 pages on it, and it's a 20-mark paper. Even if you write 20 pages on problems, the issue is that the solutions aspect in the question, because the question said give problems as well as solutions, perhaps the problems carried 10-mark weightage and the solutions carried 10-mark weightage too. So because you simply skipped the solutions part, even if you write 20 pages on the problems aspect of the question, you will not get 18 out of 20 or 16 out of 20 or 15 out of 20, because you never touched upon the solutions aspect. So you see, what I'm trying to convey is that read the question and understand the weightage of the question. address all the parts of the question. If it says define this, then define it. If it says give problems, give the problem. If it says give the background, give the background. Understand that just because you know one aspect of the question does not mean that you will excel in the exam. You will not excel in that particular question because if you do not address all aspects of the question. Okay? So the third point that I would be giving you, the third tip is directly go to the answer. And in the first page, okay? And there is no need to give any background. What students do is that, for example, if there is a topic on war on terror, and they have read books on war on terror, and they think that they know a lot about war on terror. But what if the question is on the fourth wave of terrorism? What if the question is on fifth generation warfare? They think they know so much about warfare, they're going to write 20 pages on warfare. But you see, the problem is that was never asked. If your question is about fifth generation warfare, then there is no need to write about the first generation, second generation, third generation, fourth generation. You can mention it in a paragraph, but to write 10 pages on it and give entirely long backgrounds about it is not needed and is irrelevant. So the trick is to, as soon as you read the question, directly go to the question on the first page. You know, address your question immediately, because the examiner will see if you have written what he is asking on the first page or on the second page, then he will know that you know the answer. Because sometimes when you give too lengthy a background, too lengthy a history of a question, the examiner thinks, oh, perhaps he or she doesn't know the answer and they're just making things up. So besides, there's not enough time to attempt such a long answer, so go directly to the point. That is the trick. Underline all the important aspects of the headings and go directly to the point. Now, the fourth important tip, the very important tip I would say, is to read the question and understand the demand of the question. And you will see some words written. For example, define, explain, illustrate, compare, to what extent, assess, analyze. You know, these are different terms that are given at the beginning of your questions. And I will now tell you what is the difference between each of them, because these are not just phrases in the English vocabulary, they actually carry a specific meaning from the examiner's point of view. For example, if the question says define dash, when the examiner says define, that means you have to give a definition. One definition, two definitions from figures of authority in that subject. For example, define global warming. Now, you cannot explain global warming is this, global warming is that, write an entire paragraph on global warming. No. You will give an exact definition of what global warming is from an authentic book. Define climate change, define warfare, define anything, you know. So you're not going to explain it in your own words. No, you're going to give the dictionary meaning. The authority, you know, persons of authority in that subject, how they have defined that, that is how you're going to define it. So when the examiner says define something, you'll have to define it. In one definition, give two credible definitions with the ones, with the name of the author as well. Secondly, you know, when the examiner says describe something, describe this phenomenon, for example. Now, description is very easy to write. Description simply means that, for example, in the general science and abilities question paper, there is a graph written, there's a graph made, or there's a pie chart made, and there's a pie chart made, and below the pie chart it will be written, describe the pie chart. So you simply have to describe it. It's very simple. Just simply describe the pie chart, that 60% says this, 40% says this. That's it. Simply describe it, that what does it look like? Whatever it is that you have to describe, what does it look like? Describe the heart, describe the liver. So simply describe it. Liver looks like this, heart looks like this, heart has 4 chambers. Simply describe it. There is no analytics to description. Simply describe it. That's all that is asked when the examiner says describe. When the examiner says explain, when they use the word quote explain unquote, what does explain mean? Explain means that you have to explain it, that why it is the way it is. If something exists like this, if there are floods happening in Pakistan, for example, and you are asked explain why, explain the flood situation in Pakistan, explain the effects of climate change on Pakistan. So you will explain it, and you will explain why are the floods happening, why it is the way it is. There could be several reasons for it. You will give the theory, and you will give the knowledge as well. What are the theoretical perspectives on why floods are happening in Pakistan? What is your knowledge? What is the information that you have? So explain means, you have to explain it, that why it is the way something is. The next point is when the examiner uses the word quote illustrate unquote. What does illustrate means? When the examiner says the word illustrate, it means that you have to explain it by giving diagrams, by making pie charts, by giving figures, by writing facts, by making tables. So that is what illustrate means. Basically you have to explain it, as I said, simply make diagrams, tables, pie charts, give numerical figures. So that is what illustrate means. The next word is analyze. When the examiner says quote analyze unquote, analyze means that you deconstruct it, that you go in depth. Remember when I said that do not generally go into the background of things, but when the examiner will say the word analyze, then you will go in depth. You will give the background to it as well. You can write quotes about it. For example, on war on terrorism, if the question comes analyze, if the word is written analyze, then you can surely write about the Afghan war. Okay, so you will write about the Afghan war, you can give quotations, you will go in depth. When the examiner, now the next word is quote assess unquote. When the examiner says assess something, assess means that you have to give the positives, you have to give the negatives, you have to give the advantages, you have to give the disadvantages, if there are, to that, and you will give the opinion of all those concerned. So you will say, if somebody says this is a, these are the advantages of this topic, so you will explain it, that so and so says that these are the advantages. So why do they say that? Why do they say these are the advantages? So and so says these are the disadvantages. So what are their arguments? You will present the arguments of all those, all the authorities in that specific topic. And when the examiner says to what extent, to what extent means that give evidence. So whatever you are saying, give evidence to that. That is to what extent. And another word could be compare. So when the comparison will come, simply compare seems like a very simple understanding to it, that you will compare two aspects, two theories. You will give the advantages, you will give the disadvantages, you will give the positives and the negatives of both the comparisons, and at the end you will also conclude, you can also present your side of the argument, which side of the argument are you on. So those were generally some of the words in the English vocabulary that are used in the questions that I was explaining, and I hope that helped. So do understand that, keep that in mind, and when you understand the psyche of the examiner, I'm sure it will be very helpful. Now the tip number 5 is give headings and make arguments. Now this is specifically for the CSS exam. In the CSS exam, the trick is, if you know it, then show it. Do not write with a single pen and write long paragraphs and end it after 20 pages. No, you will not do that. What you will do is that you will write 1 point is equal to 1 paragraph, and you will make a heading of that. Okay, 1 argument is equal to 1 paragraph, and you will make a heading of that. Now, if your question has 10 bullet points, which you made in the rough draft, so you will make 10 paragraphs, and of those 10 paragraphs, you will make 10 headings as well, which will be subheadings. Now, for example, advantages of something. So if you know 5 advantages, so you will make a major heading of advantages, then you will make the subheadings, 5 subheadings of advantages, in which you will write paragraphs on those 5 advantages. Okay, so make subheadings, make paragraphs. Number 6 is make diagrams. Make your paper stand out. How can you make your paper stand out is that if you make it visual. And what you can do is, for example, you can take with you different shapes. For example, a circle. You know, you can have a compass and you can make a circle and make different boxes. You can have a ruler in your exam and make boxes if you're explaining something. You know, this led to this. So rather than writing it just in a paragraph, you can also explain it visually. So give visual explanations as well. That will make your paper stand out, and the examiner will remember that paper, and there's a high chance you'll get more marks, because the examiner knows that you know. So the trick with CSS is, if you know it, show it. Whatever you know, just show it, show it visually, that you know this, and it will stand out and the examiner will know that. Number 7 point is write the names of books. Now, I'm not saying that you have to read 50 books or 40 books or even 30 books, but the thing is that you know that this topic has this book relevant to it. Okay, if you're talking about relations, Pakistan-US relations, so you know that which books are important in this area of study. You can read their summary, and you can mention those books in your answer if there's a question on Pakistan-US relations. So mention names of books with their writers and with a little summary of it. That will make your paper stand out, that will make it look more academic. So mention books, write 2 books, names of 2 books or minimum 1 book in every answer. Number 8 point is give quotations, give references. Okay, you can remember some quotations, for example, of important world leaders, and mention those quotations in the middle of the page. Use a marker, write it in the center of the page. So the exam, if it's something on World War II, you can write a quotation, and it stands out, it gives a good image, it shows that you have read academically. So write quotes, write references, that this was said in that book. So give references as well, write quotations. Number 9th point is the usage of markers. Now, you will only buy 2 markers, one blue marker and one black marker. Okay, other colors are not allowed in the exam hall. With one marker, for example, the black marker, you will make the major heading and your subheadings will be with the blue marker. Your diagrams will be with the markers. Your quotations will be with the markers. Your references will be with the markers. Your books will be written with a marker, because when you will write with a marker, they will stand out and the examiner will know that you know. So do buy markers only for this, not for the entire paper. The rest of the paper will be done with a pen, with a simple, a blue pen. But your headings, your references, your diagrams, they will be done by marker. So buy a black marker and buy a blue marker. And the last trick that I would say is that make a heading of critical analysis before your conclusion. Sometimes the examiner is not going to say critically analyze. Even when the examiner does not say critically analyze, I would recommend that you make a heading and write critical analysis right above the conclusion paragraph. Okay, you will write a critical analysis heading and you will write a critical analysis, just mention books or anything. Even if you don't know how to critically analyze it, even then make a critical analysis heading. Okay, that's a good tip. Write that, because I wrote that in all my exams. So make a critical analysis heading right above the conclusion and write something, give a reference of a book or an author or a writer, anybody. So those were the 10 tricks that I could come up with of how to excel in a CSS exam. And of course, the solution lies in practice, practice, and more practice. So attempt your answers, get them checked by somebody, and all I can say is I wish you all the very best in your exams, and I shall see you all next week, dear audience. Till then, bye-bye.